and welcome to Undaunted, bringing to the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin.
And once again, this is Okpala. In today's Undaunted, we will be delighted to host a very special guest right inside our studios, the Secretary of State for Communications and IT, Martin Mungua, PhD, FASCE, who is here not just to take some very vital questions, but as a spokesperson for the interim government to give us Ambazonian stance and government position on the purported military accord between Cameroon and Russia.
As we process the news this evening, we will be keeping a closer eye on France, the historic re-election of President Macron, the French foreign policy with regards to Africa, and most especially how it could possibly affect Ambazonia. Thanks to Macron's leadership, France has admitted its colonial mistakes in Africa and devised new ways of partnering with Africa based on mutual interests, which presents an opportunity to Africa, according to Undaunted.
Undaunted cited the fact that Macron last year asked Rwanda genocide survivors for forgiveness for failing to help stop the killing of about 1 million Rwandans between April and July 1994. Even though he fell short of offering an apology, it was a huge step to end a quarter-century of tensions between two countries. Macron started this new paradigm shift, so this new term gives him a chance to consolidate what he started in a very pragmatic way. But this policy shift needs to be institutionalized so that it goes beyond Macron and his political party, Undaunted added.
The question to France now would be, have they apologized for the genocide they are sponsoring and actively participating against the peace-loving people of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia? What could possibly be the new ways of engagement? I'm talking about France in Africa. Will Francophone observe tangible revisions in the days ahead? Before we get even into the details of that, let's revisit the president's speech I presented to you yesterday. In President Sako's words, we expect all counties and local government areas to prepare their forces to respond appropriately to the annual provocation by La République du Cameroun. I am bringing to you the full speech of President Sako's address to the nation during last Thursday's Town Hall Zoom meeting to lay a foundation for our discussion on some vital aspects this evening. From the President's address, you will see for yourself a sync of his strategic framework and implementation. I read. Fellow Ambazonians, the past week have been particularly eventful in our liberation endeavor. Lots of movements on the home front, notably the rekindling of offensives by our valiant ARFs on various fronts. We also have seen the rise of the threat of the Mbororo militia in the Sahara zone, some CPDM and La République du Cameroon regime manipulated mobs against our ARFs. We had a national mourning event for our distinguished fallen heroes. We plan to issue certificates of acknowledgement to the families of these our heroes. This will be handled by the Ambazonia Civil Society Registry. Additionally, we launched the Fire for Fire National Fundraiser, which is still ongoing. On the international scene, there has also been a lot of movement that we are closely monitoring. I want to use this opportunity to strongly condemn the recent resurgence of mass killings and torture of our innocent Ambazonian citizens by the genocidal soldiers of La République du Cameroon. On unity on the home front, our people are very united behind their interim government. The preaching by some failed coup plotters that the interim government or Dr. Sako has eaten draft money is a cheap La République propaganda sold by those who want to kill our struggle. They told you the interim government has not done anything for you so as to turn you against the interim government, forgetting that your local government area or county are the decentralized executives arm of the interim government. Some of those who tell you such lies sometimes had transferred money to you given by this interim government and or local government area and counties. But in this treachery told you the money probably came for their personal efforts, just to drive personal loyalty from you. Some of these saboteurs have had a history of disappearing money meant for the war, yet they come whitewashing themselves before you by blaming the failure on their favorite scapegoat, the interim government and Dr. Sacco. On the issues of draft money, please let nobody lie to you. Your draft money goes to your county and local government area, not to Dr. Sacco. About 94% of money contributed by the interim government last year went to your local government areas, counties, and not to the interim government. Stop listening to La Republic de Cameroon paid spoilers. Also, the total draft money per year that should come to you in your local government area will depend largely on the number of draft payers registered in your local government area who are paying their draft, not social media noisemakers. Ask anyone you hear castigating Dr. Sacco and the interim government these three questions. 1. Did you draft in 2020 and 2021? If yes, show me your draft certificate. If not, shut the hell up. 2. Who did you pay your money to? Your local government area, county, or central government? 3. Are you amongst those coup plotters who helped to scam money from some of our counties and local government areas meant to buy materials and today are trying to whitewash yourself as another government? If they don't drop the phone call, ask them what do they intend to do differently than copying from our interim government and our failures, because all they're doing is trying to appropriate our vision and our structures. You say, I know anything and I dey fail, but you dey copy all your answers them now from my book. How you sure say you go pass that exam where me I fail? Some warnings to all ARFs. Some sweet talkers out there will call you preaching unity and one love, but it is actually a Judas kiss, the kiss of betrayal. Let those who are fighting La Republic de Cameroon unite under ARF United, but let those specialize in killing their fellow Amazonian fighters go and unite under the Unity Etude Palace Warriors. But let those who want us to talk with La Republic de Cameroon as two states of equal status unite under the ARF under the interim government, because La Republic de Cameroon government will only negotiate sovereignty with the Southern Cameroon's governmental authority and not with individual combatants. This is not a rebellion within La Republic de Cameroon. This is a war of independence. With all due honor, my fellow ARFs, of all of you in the bushes who believe that you don't need the interim government, that the fighters should take command of the leadership in the home front, which one of you, if chosen, will agree to go tomorrow to any destination to negotiate our independence, then return to the bush thereafter? That person is either out of his or her mind or is a La Republic de Cameroon agent. Which international passport will you use? If you cut off from the interim government today, you all ARFs would depend 100% on levying the wary population or kidnapping for ransom. And when our people are exhausted, they will prefer the crumbs from the oppressor's table than your promise of independence, and you will lose the vital protective covering and support that you enjoy now from the population. You will all be betrayed and killed in a war for self-determination. Whichever side wins, the population ultimately wins the war. If you decide to reject this interim government as the authority speaking for you, then you should be prepared to fight for 30 more years or accept a paycheck from the enemy, surrender, and get killed thereafter. The interim government is not competing with the ARFs or the home front for any power whatsoever. The issue of power will be settled when we get to Boya. Who has ears to hear should hear. A word to the wise is sufficient. Fire for Fire National Emergency Fundraiser. As of yesterday, we counted a cash at hand of almost $20,000 from last Sunday. I have already authorized the disbursement of $16,000 to the home front. I hope you will redeem your Sunday pledges before Saturday for reasons you know. Saturday the 23rd, we are having Fire for Fire National Emergency Fundraiser for Nga Please endeavor to turn out in numbers and support our efforts to counter the threats we have at hand now. Next weekend, after 30th April, we will be doing same for Indian ahead of Art Award 2022. There is no time to waste. Please, our FMs need this national emergency support now. The Russian stunt. Puppet La Republic du Cameroon is wicked, but these people are not so stupid. They cannot in their right senses engage openly with Russia and then publicize the deal at this crucial moment. Something that can potentially put them at loggerheads with their colonial masters France. Unless La Republic du Cameroon is trying to send a message to France to give them the support they need, or else they will go to the way of Central African Republic, Mali and Guinea. La Republic du Cameroon is surely very desperate. They are in dire need of help to crush Ambazonia, but their credit card has been maxed, and no one is willing to lend them money. Our intelligence says they are merely scheming for the support of their own wailing allies by provoking them to jealousy. This is their warning to the French, a well-cooked-up fake news sold to the media. That so-called military accord had everything wrong on it. No proper letterhead reflecting the two states or parties involved, Russia and La Republic du Cameroon. No official seals of the two sides, wrong spelling of the Russian general's name, even the misspelled name is incomplete. Imagine that only the badly spelled last name of a person signing a document on behalf of the Russian Federation appears on that document. But the La Republic du Cameroon kangaroo, colonial minister of defense, has his first and last names appended on the document. This is deja vu. Remember that there was also the special drones fake news, the French warship fake news, the special forces from Israel fake news, and now this Russia military accord fake news. Please, don't also forget their fake Amnesty International observers. This is laughable. Do you see how far we have brought almighty La Republic du Cameroon to their knees? ARFs on a place day. But whatever the case with this piece of fake news, just remember Ambassador Thibault Nage just told us that this is good news for Ambazonia. We'll find out what that means. Those of you who tried to push me around for years now to approach Russia for help can now understand why I said no. If you still think I was wrong, go read Ambassador Thibault Nage's tweet. The National Treasury. Fellow Ambazonians, as I told you before, while we were at the ASSC2 in Washington, D.C., coup plotters tried to steal the money in some of our accounts. The total amount is more than $100,000, and our bankers arrested one of the fraudulent transactions and is yet to restore our money back to our accounts. We are pursuing this and other issues relating to our bank accounts and payment platforms judicially. The money that this do-nothing group of people have either stolen or caused to be withheld is your money. Please help me ask the coup plotters union why they chose to tamper with money that belongs to counties and local government areas at this very crucial time. Ask them who authorized them to steal from our websites and our payment platforms. The National Audit Committee, NAC, under the leadership of the acting chairman Solomon Amba, reconvened last Tuesday to continue with the national audit exercise. We were assured by our CPAs that the ABC audit will be the first to be finalized in a couple of weeks. They will then proceed with the department and counties. I urge all counties to vet and send us their accountants or CPAs to join the NSC and facilitate the process. The NSC will also review the financial records protocols in all the 13 counties. Each county shall be inspected and certified by NSC before the 2022 draft. Upcoming trainings for our county defense officers. The interim government shall be organizing 2 training seminars, one in Europe and other in America, on humanitarian law. The training is for selected Ambazonian National Self-Defense Council and the Department of Self-Defense and Security officers. Registration for the America seminar will commence very soon. We shall be bringing you details through your county, local government area executives. Regarding the 20th May provocation, we expect all counties and local government areas to prepare their forces to respond appropriately to the annual provocation by La Republic du Cameroon. The DSS is working hand in gloves with the counties to make sure that this celebration of fraud in our territory this year is very remarkable as usual. Diplomacy. Please, we are now in the most crucial phase of our diplomacy. There are important decisions to be reached, and we must endeavor to be involved in the conversation to influence the outcome. The Russian-Ukraine war has changed the world. Strategic alliances are being redefined or strengthened. Ambazonia too must navigate through this new complex reality, avoid pitfalls and take advantage of opportunities where we see them. A war is fought with the hand, but won with the brain. We need both to prevail. Thank you, Ambazonians, for coming. Viva the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. God bless our beautiful country.
Gave him 5 more years. Century's President Emmanuel Macron won re-election on Sunday. With this, he's stopping far-right challenger Marine Le Pen in a battle that had major implications for NATO, the European Union, EU, populism, and more. Macron's decisive victory was also historic. He's the first French president with a parliamentary majority to be re-elected since the Fifth Republic was born, that is in 1958. We reached out to our experts at the Europe Center for more on what the results tells us and what to expect from Macron in his second term. On governance and democracy issues on the continent of Africa, Ndushabandi underscored Macron's failure to bring democracy to Africa in his first term by turning a blind eye to undemocratic practices in some West African allies, in complete betrayal of France's own values. Before recent regime changes, the French president was being criticized for notably cooperating with leaders in Chad, Mali, and Guinea. Ndushabandi said, "This next term offers a good opportunity for Macron if he takes lessons to change France's historical past on the African continent."
As war returned to the European continent and with the result of the election much more uncertain this time, the stakes led European leaders to express their concern. The opinion piece by the German, Spanish and Portuguese leaders published in Le Monde on Friday was unprecedented, stating the choice French people are facing is crucial for France and for all of us in Europe. They laid out how the trajectory of France is intertwined with their own countries, as all of them are EU and NATO members. Given that France is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, and a founding member of NATO and the EU, none of its partners is indifferent to the result of the election. While the war in Ukraine is still raging and France still holds the presidency of the Council of the EU for 2 more months, the re-elected president has a challenge to find the balance between the demanding international European agenda and the more domestic concerns expressed by French citizens, knowing that 28% of them decided not to vote, a record since 1969.
African Union congratulates French President Emmanuel Macron on re-election. Congratulatory messages are pouring in for French President Emmanuel Macron, who secured re-election on Sunday after fiercely contesting poll with far-right veteran opposition Marine Le Pen. On Monday, the African Union, AU, described Macron's win as a brilliant re-election. Chairperson Moussa Faki Mohamed, in a tweet, called for the continued establishment of renewed and mutually beneficial relations between France and Africa. In his words, I quote, "I am happy to continue our commitment with him to build renewed and mutually beneficial relations between Africa and France, and more broadly, Europe," Mohamed's tweet reads. For his part, Chadian President Mohamed in a statement described Macron's re-election as a feat that crystallizes a crowning achievement of his democratic political action and his international commitment.
French President Emmanuel Macron can use his second term in office to redeem France's image in Africa, according to experts. The 44-year pro-European history is presidential with 58% of the vote, beating his rival Marine Le Pen, who garnered 41.5%. In an interview with Anadolu agency, Amba, the director of the Kigali-based Institute of Research and Dialogue for Peace, observed that France's influence, legitimacy, and credibility on the continent has been waning, especially in its former colonies in West Africa. The re-election of President Macron therefore gives him an opportunity to reposition France in Africa, said Undaunted. This is an advantage for France. Instead of having a new president with a new understanding of Africa, Macron can extend to revive French glory on the continent. This is where the question lies. France's interest in Africa might be at jeopardy, and contender has to be Russia. France has been kicked out of Mali and the Central African Republic by Russia, and it would appear Russia is nurturing a rapid growing interest in the Cameroons. Before we get into that and the purported military accord between Cameroon and Russia, let's watch a recap of our analysis on this story. The truth is, the purported military accord between Cameroon and Russia is quite controversial. The document circulating in the social media doesn't look serious per se, but some credible sources have happened to mention the story somehow. Georges Bruno, born April 2nd, 1962, in Montélimar-en-Forêt, Allier, is a French journalist, specialist in the Middle East and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Grand reporter at Le Figaro, he was taken hostage for several months by the Islamic Army in Iraq in 2004, had this to say on Twitter. In his words, "The English sent us the message that if no one stops Wagner, Russians' mercenary in Africa, and especially if they return to the English-speaking part of Cameroon, their specialized services will take care of stopping them." Early last week, this was what Thibonage had to say on Twitter. Can't believe Cameroon government incredibly bad timing of signing military deal with Russia. At height of aggression in Ukraine, this is poking the eye of US and France, two countries Cameroon may need help from in future, but good for Ambazonians. Here's the thing. Aside the fact that the two parties involved with this military accord haven't officially acknowledged the recent document making the rounds on the social media, when we pressed on with our sources in Yaoundé, they rather told us that, yes, Cameroon had signed a military accord with Russians in 2015, and they told us that it was only renewed. The same source in the presidency, I'm talking about their Tweedy presidency of BIA that gave us the information the first time, also say that they just signed an accord and they might have done this one for a public relations stunt. But that notwithstanding, there is an accord that was signed in 2015 with the Russians. It is probable that they brandished this thing made anyhow to give the expression as we've been able to explain. So of course there is an accord as confirmed from our source. So what can we make out of that is the vital question. The only dividend we can make out of that is if that is enough to provoke the Americans to turn towards us. That's the only dividend. And before America will act, take a radical change of position, it all depends on what their own intelligence suggests. What the truth is on the matter, the US knows what to do to get their facts. Only we must realize that this is not a sensational thing. This is a security issue. This is what government on the situation before they change their position. If they discover that truly La République de Cameroon has gone that far, it is not a stunt. It's not a make-believe. It's not a whole thing that they're trying to recycle for the media. It is reality. America can radically change their position, and that is where we can gain some dividend. But up till now, we can make all the noise we want to make. If America does not believe that anything significant has changed, that jeopardizes their interests. They cannot change a formula or paradigm. They cannot shift to Ambazonians. So, whatever the case, the United States of America knows more than what the media says. America knows more than what we report. America knows what the truth is and different from what the media is saying. From our sources from Dr. Sacco's office, the interim government plans to talk to the U.S. government as if that treaty accord that has been there is a threat to Ambazonia's interest and America's interest. The interim government is going to approach the U.S. in that light, and it is clear that what the U.S. knows on the issue is what will advise their actions. The sources from the office of President Sacco says most reporters in social don't have much intelligence as we have. I also agree that hyping it and saying that these people have gone towards Russia can work for our good, for good public relations, but the dividend will all depend on what the truth of the matter is. That means whatever we say, America has to verify it. If that is true, that's what will advise their position as far as the American interest is concerned. By this observation, I think Ambazonians should stay calm.
And in Undaunted tonight, we have our news director, Debunking. He's here to take some questions. How are you doing, Debunking? How are you doing today?
Let him know he's muted.
All right, I can't really hear you, so probably you check your connections.
Sound.
Your sound. We can't hear you here.
He can hear you.
But I can't hear him here.
He's muted.
Very loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Oh yes, I can hear you now very loud and clear. All right, very quickly, Paddy, tell us what you think about these particular. I mean, we've been talking about these agreements for a long time now. When will the truth come out?
Okay. The Secretary of State for Communications, I'm made to understand that he's connected, and I would like you to liaise with your technical crew to affirm that the Secretary of State is connected. We have been talking a lot these days. I don't have much to say. I think the Secretary of State will be giving government position as to what is happening. And if he's connected, Onya, I'd like you to affirm that with me. But then I would preferably want to comment on Macron's re-election. It's quite complex. I said the other day on TV that diplomacy is a dangerous water. Anybody can be a friend and anybody can be an enemy. But the interim government has a vision. They have a project. They have a roadmap. The blueprint is clear enough, and the interim government is following the blueprint. That notwithstanding, the interim government is vigilant. Today, when we listen from the Secretary of State for Communications, Dr. Martin Mungua, we will know actually what the interim government stand is. Everybody has spoken. The state attorney yesterday gave his impression. We've had other individuals come here to give their impression. Now Macron has been re-elected. You just reported in the news right now that Macron apologized during his first term. He acknowledged that annexation was a crime against humanity, was a human rights abuse. He apologized in many speeches. But can we match words to action? We instead saw France being kicked out of Mali. France has been kicked out of the Central African Republic. France has not willingly rephrased the Francophonic concept of Francophonie in Africa. That's a big concern. So if you have Russia, on the other hand, gaining interest in the Cameroons, like you have just mentioned, it's good for us to be keen about it and to re-strategize. You have to understand that by some very proxy, Cameroon is actually leading or is actually colonizing and fighting the former British Southern Cameroons, which is being sponsored by France. Now, if Cameroon goes heads on with Russia, by implication, Russia could follow suit with France because of the interest. The interest is in the oil in Dian. The interest is in the rich resources of Southern Cameroon. So whatever might be Russia's interest, get into a polypurported because the circumstances leading to the agreement are not clear. We understand that there was an affirmation for an agreement in 2015, which must have been resurrected right now. We are not kicking out the fact that there are chances that a desperate Cameroon will resurrect it. But again, the document was not clear, so we had to judge it. And there are other things that we felt perhaps it's Cameroon's way of doing propaganda. So right now, I believe the SOS is there. Perhaps you just would have to ask most of these questions from him. I'll be at the background just listening and following up. The SOS is there. I just want to hand over the floor to you. You talk to him. He has a statement to give, and then he's going to take some of your questions.
All right. Thank you so much for always standing by. And of course, we've confirmed that the SOS is there. And so we have lots and lots of questions for him here from the ABC Amba TV studios. Now, all over the world, it is believed that when an attack lasts over 24 hours, it means that the government is deeply involved. The people of Ambazonia, our people, are rendered helpless and homeless on a regular basis. But we will keep talking till our voices are heard. Meanwhile, the question that I always would ask is, how long will it take the international community to come to our rescue? That how long will it take the international community to come to our aid? How much more are we supposed to suffer?
The atrocities that lasted for over 24 hours started Tuesday, March 29th and subsided Wednesday, March 30th, 2022, as villagers rendered homeless sought refuge in the neighboring villages of Mbimgo and Ver. Say Amazonian Restoration Forces had killed 3 borrowers suspected to be blacklegs working with colonial forces through because they wrought in retaliation from the latter jointly with the Bororo militias has been devastating.
The colonial military, which has always dreaded the Ambazonia Restoration Forces, demonstrated their vexation on innocent civilians, ransacking, looting, and setting properties ablaze, and in the process, killing in the name of Amado.
Worthy to note that skirmishes between the Restoration Forces and the Bororo militias, colonial forces, and the colonial administration in the Savannah has been a regular in stock as the colonial administrators reap benefits to the detriment of Amazonian denizens who were disfavored by the colonial administration. We have the latest story on this yesterday. Watch.
Yes, madam. Who are you and what has brought you people up here?
I am Fai Caroline Fake. We are from Jirong, Mborong. We are women from Mborong. We have come to cry to our father, the governor of Northwest Province, that the Dumo people have invaded our land. They are killing our children, they are killing our husbands, they are burning our houses, they are harvesting our crops, and they have rendered the area so terrible for us. And so we have come to cry to our father that he should come to our rescue. These are women from Jirong, Mborong. We have trade from Mborong to Ntaba, to Mborong, to Mbonso, to Magua. And then we took a car from Magua and we passed through Bafusa. And then we are right here.
You're coming all the way from that area and it's in Donga-Matung. Does it mean the administration has not been able to solve your problem?
We have gone to the Dio of Ndu and he is unable to solve our problem. he says he doesn't want to see us in his office. We have gone to the SDO of Donga-Matung, that's in Kambe, and he says the matter is above his level. So we came back thinking that he would channel the matter to the hierarchy, but we made killing and the brutal action continued, and there is nothing done. So that is why we have decided to come as women, that we cannot sit to see our husbands, our women, our children being killed, being murdered in cold blood, and we sit quiet.
You've come and the LG has attended to you people. Are you people living satisfied that you've been able to pass your message to the administration that be?
We are satisfied because the Secretary General spoke with us and assured us that in the shortest time possible, the matter will be solved. That we should give him free chance to work. So we are waiting that he will act in the shortest time possible. So we are waiting. We have been assured. He was there with the Inspector General, he was there with the Inspector of Police, he was there with the Commissioner of Police. All of them, they were there, and so they spoke so encouraging words to us, and they assured us that the matter will be solved.
You were just watching and listening to the plight of these innocent women suffering for no fault of their own. Just because Ambazonia needs to regain its lost integrity, they arrived Bamenda yesterday, Wednesday. The corrupt nature of the colonial administrators of Donga-Matung County pushes denizens to painfully go to extremes. The colonial DO of Undu himself, a Fulani, and his boss, the colonial SDO of Donga-Matung County, connive with the Bororo cattle graziers from whom they have robbed of cattle. These dubious activities have made the colonial administrators of Donga-Matung County stupidly rich, and they fund farmers-grazier conflict which they trash in favor of their accomplices, Bororos. This is the root cause of the Ntuba and Njirong of Undu local government area farm crisis escalation again. Some 32 women from Njirong, tired with the handling of their cases by these corrupt colonial administrators of Donga-Matung County, have trekked in the most part through the La Republic du Cameroon's western region to Bamenda in the Midlands to meet with the colonial governor to table same issues which could have been handled in the Savannah simply because the colonial administrators they have been compromised and are ashamed to receive them over and over for the same cases. Sadly enough, this is where we are with the administration, military and administrative aggression with impunity. Where do we go from here? We hope that the Secretary of State of Self-Defense, Mr. Francis Chenil, to tell us in very specific terms what approach or what 22 will employ to stop this outrageousness sooner than later.
And today we have in the studio the SOS for Communications and IT, Dr. Martin Mungua. Now, you should know that Dr. Martin Mungua is a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers, FASCE, a certified project management professional, PMP, an ICC special inspector on structural steel and bolting. He is also a U.S. licensed professional engineer, PE, he is registered in several states. He also holds 2 patents on structural connectors, but now he serves his oppressed people, the people of the former British Southern Cameroons and Ambazonia, as a spokesperson for the interim government of Ambazonia. Dr. Martin Mungua, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
If you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes,
you can hear
5 on 5. Can you hear me?
Very well, loud and clear. How are you doing today?
Okay. I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well. I've been watching you, and I'm very pleased with the quality of news that you are giving the Ambazonian people and the world at large. I think this is the first time I've had this sort of contact with you. I've just been watching you in the background. So today is a great day for me, at least to interact with you. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, and I'm going to be getting more. All right, so please tell us what you
Right.
have for us today. You have, I understand you have
Yeah.
government's position on this. So let's hear from you, sir.
Right. Um, Global greetings to all Ambazonians. So today I'm going to present to you the recent military cooperation agreement between Cameroon and Russia and its implication for Ambazonia. The Republic of Cameroon and the Russian Federation signed a military cooperation agreement in Moscow on the 12th of April 2022. The agreement was purportedly signed between Cameroon's Minister of Defense, Joseph Beti Asomo, and his Russian counterpart, Sergei Shoigu. This surprising agreement comes almost 2 months after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a move that has drawn widespread condemnation from the international community. This action prompted a UN General Assembly vote in February condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine and calling for an end to the ongoing war that has led to the death of tens of thousands and forcing millions of Ukrainians as refugees in foreign lands. This action also led to a vote at the UN General Assembly suspending Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. This invasion also comes at a time when Cameroon is engaged in a brutal war of occupation and genocide in the southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, for the past 5 years now. Within the text of this military cooperation agreement, the two countries agreed to exchange opinions and information in the field of international defense and security policy, training troops, military, education, medicine, and topography. It should be noted that Cameroon's military cooperation with Russia dates back to 2013, when Cameroon signed a contract with Russia to deliver MiL Mi-17 multi-role military transport helicopters. The contract was signed with Russian state arm exporter Boron Export, a unit of Russian technologies. So the recent agreement is not the first time that Cameroon would enter into a military deal with a European superpower. Also, in April of 2015, Russia and Cameroon signed a military technical cooperation agreement. So what makes this agreement significant is the timing of it, at a time when many countries around the world are cutting ties and condemning Russia for its recent invasion of her relatively smaller neighbor, Ukraine. It also comes on the heels of increasing activities of the Kremlin-linked Wagner Group, a private military outfit that is present in a number of African countries like Mali and helps in boosting Russia's influence in West Africa, and allegedly involved in human rights abuses and other atrocities. Many observers, including a lot of southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, have considered the recent rapprochement between Yaoundé and Moscow troubling, especially in view of the similarities between Cameroon's continuing atrocities in its war of occupation in Ambazonia and Russia's ongoing war of occupation against the Republic of Ukraine. Cameroon's recent abstention from two crucial votes in the UN condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine is also telling. Our intelligence suggests that other than uh, other than the military cooperation agreement, Cameroon's Minister of Defense might also have been to buy or borrow cheap defense materials to use in Ambazonia in view of the economic effects of the sanctions imposed upon Russia by the international community. It should also be important to know that when Cameroon signed its first military cooperation agreement with Russia in 2015, it was just 1 year after the Russian annexation and occupation of Crimea, leading to heightened tensions between the two countries that has finally erupted into a full-blown war we are witnessing today. The interim government of Ambazonia, led by Dr. Samuel Ekomisako, is watching the ongoing developments closely in view of the continued assistance of the Ambazonian people against the brutal occupation of our territory. While ready for dialogue and negotiations with French Cameroon under the auspices of the Swiss-led process, United Nations, the EU, and the African Union, we continue to call on the members of the UN Security Council, of which the Russian Federation is a permanent member, to invoke the responsibility to protect RTP by passing a resolution calling for an end to Cameroon's occupation and war of aggression against Ambazonia. The interim government is equally concerned about the possible involvement of the Wagner Group, a private Russian militia company in the Amazonian conflict, a group that has recently been accused of atrocities and human rights violations on the African continent, notably the Central African Republic, Libya, Sudan, and Mali. It's noteworthy that Russia recently used its veto as the UN Security Council recently to block a resolution calling on a UN-sponsored fact-finding mission into alleged atrocities in Mali involving the Wagner Group. The recent military agreement between the Russian Federation and the French Republic of Cameroon is therefore of grave concern to the interim government of Amazonia and the Amazonian people in general. This agreement signals the continuation of military ties between Russia and Cameroon, being simply a revision and an extension of the military deal signed in 2015. Generally vague in nature, in the 13-page document, the two countries agree to exchange opinions and information on defense policies, international security, development of relations in the areas of joint training, medicine, topography, and military hydrography. They also agree to exchange experiences and interaction in peace support operations under the aegis of the United Nations. It should also be noted that apart from Cameroon, other West African nations have long-standing military pacts with Russia, including Nigeria and Ghana. In 2016, Russia and Ghana signed a military technical cooperation agreement for weapons supplies and joint training. That same year, it signed a cooperation agreement with the Gambia. The government of the Central African Republic has also expressed interest in hosting a Russian military base in their country. Russian military advisors have been present in the Central African Republic now for a number of years. More than 500 Russian military instructors and advisors are currently active in CAR, raising concerns on Russia's designs in the sub-region. However, none of these agreements was signed after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So the agreement leaves the international community the impression that Cameroon condones the present war launched by Russia, hoping that Russia will also support its illegal occupation and war of genocide against the peoples of the southern Cameroons, Ambazonia. The interim government of Ambazonia, southern Cameroons, led by Dr. Samuel Komisako, notes with some consternation that the symbolic trip and subsequent signing of the military agreement between Cameroon and the Kremlin's comes at the wake of Russia's increased offensive in Ukraine recently, despite the increasing demands for a ceasefire and peaceful negotiations to end the conflict, due to the massive humanitarian consequences of this tragic war. Despite calls for several years now for the Republic of Cameroon to engage in peaceful negotiations with the legitimate Ambazonian leadership so as to find a peaceful solution to the conflict, the Cameroon government has instead doubled down on its war of occupation and genocide against our people, multiplying its atrocities against Ambazonia with daily massacres of civilians. That may explain why, despite criticisms against Russia's invasion, Cameroon has kept mute, and the recent signing of the military pact with Russia may indicate where they actually stand. Meanwhile, the interim government of Ambazonia continues to monitor the recent developments closely in view of the implications for our struggle and the quest to end French Cameroon's illegal occupation of our country and subsequent restoration of our sovereign statehood. We continue to pursue all diplomatic channels in calling the attention of the UN, the EU, the AU, CEMAC, ECOWAS, and other stakeholders in order to pressure the Republic of Cameroon to end her illegal occupation of Ambazonia. This tragic war of occupation, annexation, and genocide launched by Cameroon has left more than 20,000 civilians dead, tens of thousands of refugees, and millions of internally displaced persons. While engaging the other members of the UN Security Council, we'll continue to engage the Russian Federation as well, calling their attention to the atrocities of French Cameroon in Amazonia and seeking their good offices in the UN Security Council in seeking a resolution of the ongoing war in a manner where the legitimate rights of our self-determination and sovereign statehood of the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonian people are guaranteed. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin, for peace and position. It's clear. But then, of course, I wouldn't leave you without asking you a few questions. If you can hear me loud and clear, please confirm that.
Yes, I can hear you, although it's sort of intermittent, but I can hear the last statement you made. Over to you.
All right. Okay, so in your last paragraph, I did hear where you made mention of tragic war, the consequences, things that it has on us. And, you made mention of thousands of dead people, thousands of refugees, and millions of internally displaced persons. Now, remember, and if you, and I'm sure that you know that we need to keep our people alive because, I mean, we all need to get to Boya together. Now, the extra ideas, our people stay. I mean, we can't keep dying.
Question is that what are we doing in order to stay alive? Is that correct? Is that what you asked me? Okay, thank you. I mean, that's a very important question, and we have to understand the nature and the cruelty of this war. In a war like this, I think the best information, the best advice we can give is that we all have to be educated and we all have to be vigilant. Vigilance is very important, and especially to our ARFs. It is very important for them to know that this war is a war whereby it's like a guerrilla warfare. And we really have to be very careful in terms of how we defend our people, how we attack the enemy. And this is something that we don't just do it casually. It has to be properly reflected upon and executed. And that's where I strongly advise our ARFs to listen to the Department of Self-Defense because they have basic strategies of survival. They have to listen. And especially now that we've heard what happened recently in Guzan, where some of our ARFs were killed for reasons that could have been avoided as a result of aligning themselves with a foreign group in the name of unity. I think this is time that we really have to be very, very careful. And even to the civilians, they have to listen to the basic instructions of safety. They have to be very careful dealing with people that they do not know. But at the same time, they should understand that the only force on the ground that will protect them is the ARFs. Nobody else will do that. So it is incumbent upon them to protect them and not to become sellouts to the occupying forces. So these are all basic survival techniques that we really have to learn because at the end of the day, this country belongs to us. It doesn't belong to La Republique. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Please stand on and stand by first. We have more questions, but we still need to get back to the news. So please hold on first. We'll definitely come back for more questions. Now, those who believe Cameroon's Anglophone crisis will simply fade away are blind. Instead, it is following a path of steady escalation and is on the way to regionalization. Without resolving the fundamental causes, it will get much worse. Wake up, international community. Now, this statement you heard is from Tibor Nagi's tweet of yesterday in reaction to the resilience on the ground of our Ambazonia people. Now, what do you think, Star?
What was your question again? Sorry.
What do you think about Tibor Nagi's statement?
Oh, okay. In spite of that wise counsel from Tibonage, it would appear that the colonial government is yet to understand that manipulation and intimidation will not soften the resolve of this generation, the never again generation whose only resolve is total independence for Ambazonia. The reason why the administration always targets the civilian population, either in an attempt to turn them against the cause or intimidate them, is yet unfathomable.
You know, reports reaching our studios, the Undaunted studio, states that over 40 young entrepreneurs, some of whom are graduates and fending for livelihoods, unable to find jobs. Of course, you know how the economic has raped them, the land, and they all owned motorbikes. This report says that they were arrested by colonial government forces on Sunday as they went to Oko village in Bui County to bury the young colleague of theirs who was shot and killed in Bamenda on Friday last week.
We need to find out what Secretary Martins Mungua thinks about this story, but before that, let's watch our report. Only, in spite of that wise counsel there from Thibonage, it would appear that the colonial government is yet to understand that manipulation and intimidation will not soften the resolve of this generation, the never-again generation whose only resolve is total independence for Ambazonia. The reason why the administration always targets the civilian population, either in an attempt to turn them against the cause or intimidate them, is yet unfathomable. Reports reaching Undaunted states that over 40 youngsters, entrepreneurs, some of whom are graduates and fending for livelihoods, unable to find jobs in an economical raped land and who owned motorbikes, were arrested by colonial government forces on Sunday as they went to Oku village in Bui County to bury the young colleague of theirs shot and killed in Bamenda on Friday last week. I am talking about the guy wasted and dumped in the stream in Mulan, below Foncha. A huge number of their bikes were impounded while they have been rounded up and some brought to Bamenda town, while others have been distributed to other cells in the entire northern zone. Our sources say they are tagged as Ambazonian fighters because they accompanied the burial of the late bike rider who himself was never an Ambazonian fighter. This testimony is according to an eyewitness account. Now, on the other hand, Ambazonia restoration forces have stepped up their game across the national territory.
All right, Dr. Martins Mungua, are you still there?
I'm still here. Right. So what happened in that part of the northern zone is not new. La Republic is simply recycling the tactics that they've used in the past, a tactic of violence and a tactics of arresting people who have nothing to do with the struggle. These were unarmed civilians, totally unarmed, and to have sort of arrested them and labeled them Amba boys is absolutely ridiculous. Look, we're even lucky that it was caught on camera. In the past, what they would do is that they would take a few of them and execute them and dump their bodies, as we've seen in other situations. So I'm happy that it is caught on camera and the international community, especially the Red Cross, are watching. These are the examples of the sort of atrocities that La Republique commits all the time. So it is a usual tactic. They're just recycling what they've had in their playbook for the past 5 years. And it's very unfortunate. These people are innocent. They're innocent young men, and they all should be freed. But again, we are only lucky that this time round, it's under camera, and they know that the international community is aware of what they are doing. So they should really take note. This is typical of La Republique tactic of arresting unarmed people and killing them.
All right, now I've read reports from some other African nations. Just the other day I was reading reports on some other country, and I think Nigeria also, and it got to a point where the government asked the people to protect themselves. Now, when we come to our nation here, Ambazonia, and then the school children are killed, our mothers raped, sisters raped, and all of such evil vices heard, do you think that it's time that we can equip our people to probably also find a way to defend themselves at a time like this? Do you think it's wise?
Important opinion here. And you also have to note that in terms of school children being attacked or killed, the position of the interim government is that we would like the parents to assess the degree of risk and take full responsibility, because we can't give an order for certain things to be done. And it's important that whatever we do, we make recommendations, and the local population has to listen to us and has to take the rightful decisions based on that risk assessment. It will be absolutely wonderful, and I think that will be the ultimate situation for everybody to be armed. If the entire population is armed, I'm sure we're going to cut down on the casualties that affect our population as a result of this illegal aggression by La Republique terrorists. So I see that as a point where we really have to see if that is physically possible. But nonetheless, we are making sure that our restoration forces have the capacity to operate at this time. And I think they've been doing a wonderful job ever since this conflict started. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Dr. Martin, please still hang on there, because we will proceed with the news, but we'll definitely come back to you for more questions. As it stands now, no credible media house has reported the purported military accord between La Republique du Cameroon and Russia. We have just pointed out some glaring reasons why we question the authentication of the agreement. It would appear that this could be disinformation concocted by the Cameroons.
Only, you know, with the war in Ukraine, we have seen Russia also deploy disinformation as a war strategy. Russia has hacked Ukraine's media space to thwart or influence public opinion. This tells us psychological warfare is essential in military warfare.
Our focus here tonight is the genocidal onslaught in Ukraine and Ambazonia and the response of the West. Yes, Ambazonians applaud the Biden's administration for the TPS, which is a category.
But this is the puzzle. Russia in Ukraine, France in Ambazonia. What's the difference? Why is Ambazonia receiving a lack of support from globalization enabling actors?
Now, before we turn to our interview studio with Dr. Mungua, let's get full report from Gab Ellison. Now, in this report, you will understand the humanitarian collateral damages in Ambazonia during the last 6 years.
We still need Secretary to talk on this, but first, let's get Gab Ellison's coverage on this.
Millions of men, women, and children in the southern Cameroon's liberation struggle have been negatively impacted by a war that was imposed upon them by the president of French Cameroon on November 30th, 2017. Throughout history, it is known that vulnerable populations often face neglect, hardships, and exploitation in warring environments. That is exactly what is happening in the areas dubbed northern and southern zones of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, where women, children, the elderly, and the disabled are bearing the brunt of the war. Here are the most prominent of problems faced by our women, children, and the elderly. They are forced to participate in acts of violence and armed conflict by the army of French Cameroon. Women and children are targeted to give out information about their family members who are simply defending themselves and their families from the French Cameroon army of occupation. They are exposed to killings every day and forced to bury their loved ones. There are numerous videos of mothers and grandmothers digging graves to bury their deceased because their sons, husbands, or other male family members are either dead, in prison, or hiding for their lives. They experience more disabilities due to the hostilities by French Cameroon's army. We have seen videos and pictures of physical injuries meted on them by the army, broken limbs, and much more. They are unjustly imprisoned with no access to due process. Several of our women are incarcerated for no justifiable reason, including pregnant women, in order to terrorize our different communities. They are internally displaced and experience poverty, malnutrition, and deteriorating health conditions. This is the basic cause of ill health and death amongst the elderly, children, and women, especially because of the collapse of health centers or facilities. Thanks to the government of French Cameroon, which burned down these structures through their scorched earth policy. Prenatal and postnatal care are practically non-existent as women are given birth in bushes. Furthermore, many women are forced to use moss plants as menstrual pads. Women and children are separated from the rest of their families, and many are homeless, often experiencing mental and psychological trauma and a decline in their physical health. For example, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide, nightmares, headaches, and other health complications like high blood pressure. There has been an increase in trafficking of women and young girls, sexual exploitation and rape. We have heard numerous accounts of women and young girls being victims of various cases of sexual harassment and even gang raping by French Cameroonian military, after which they are often left to perish. The outcome of some of these rape incidences are unwanted pregnancies and the contraction of sexually transmitted diseases. Some of our women are working as indentured servants just to survive daily due to their loss of livelihood. There are also numerous cases of child labor due to the fact that many children have lost guardians and no longer have adults to care for them. Most of our rural women are predominantly peasant farmers. They farm to feed their families and to trade. Most have lost their land, and those who have not are not able to farm due to the current hostile environment. Children of the poor are deprived of education, unlike the children of the elites. We understand that the right to life supersedes the right to an education. Therefore, during war times, traditional education in schools is discouraged because the safety of both students and teachers cannot be guaranteed. The Kumba massacre is an unequivocal reminder that the French Cameroon government has no fiber of decency when even young innocent children are heinously murdered at school in order to frame Ambazonian Restoration Forces, ARF. Finally, thousands of women, children, and our elderly population are refugees in foreign lands, and some perish on their way to presumably safe countries. Recently, a refugee by name William committed suicide in one of the refugee camps in Nigeria. With regards to our southern Cameroonian prisoners of conscience, it is worth noting that at least 5,000 of them are languishing in jails in both French Cameroon and the southern Cameroon/Ambazonia. Southern Cameroonian prisoners of conscience have been held in French Cameroon jails since 1961. With the uprising in 2016, we have seen an exponential increase in the number of prisoners. Some of them were arrested and detained because they were exercising their rights, the right of freedom of speech and peaceful protest. Others were victims of extrajudicial arrests just for being at the wrong place at the wrong time, or for being sympathetic towards the liberation struggle of the Southern Cameroons. We were all astounded by the treatment of Nera 10 headed by Ayuk Tabe Julius by both the Nigerian authorities and the government of La République du Cameroon, and others have been arrested because they dared to defend themselves against the brutality of the French Cameroon security forces. Many of these young men have been detained indefinitely with no legal assistance accorded them because their families are unable to fulfill the illegal and extortionate monetary demands by soldiers, police, or gendarmes. To make matters worse, the inhumane conditions they all face are unbearable and deplorable. They are denied access to humanitarian, medical, and legal support. Just recently, Doctors Without Borders were kicked out of our homeland because they refused to provide the colonial government of Biya with information that will be used to victimize our people. These prisoners live in very crowded quarters despite the threat of COVID-19. Those who are lucky may be fed once a day. At least 100 have died in prison due to poor health care, poor feeding, overcrowding, or torture. According to reports confirmed by credible human rights organization from 2016. It is recorded that over 400 towns and villages and over 600 houses have been razed in some cases, with elderly parents burned to ashes. The number of Southern Cameroonian refugees all over the world is estimated to be over 1 million, with about 300,000 in neighboring Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, as well as Ghana and Togo. The rest are mainly in Asia, Australia, Europe, and the Americas. Within the Cameroons, it is estimated that the number of internally displaced persons, IDPs, is over 2.5 million. The number of prisoners of conscience languishing in the jails of French Cameroon and Southern Cameroon is estimated at about 5,000. There are about 1 million cases of rape victims in major urban areas, with most cases not reported. It is a daunting fact that almost every female in Southern Cameroon is in danger of these crimes regardless of their age groups. Due to intimidation and fear, these cases often go unreported. It is also estimated that about 5,000 people have been maimed. Despite the severity of these cases, most are treated at hideouts and at home because the military invades hospitals in southern Cameroon, often killing more innocent civilians. Over 3,000 youths have been reported missing. There are several mass graves in both the northern and southern zones of southern Cameroon. It is estimated that over 35,000 to 40,000 of southern Cameroonians have been killed. Harassments, extortions, kidnappings by the Cameroonian military is now a daily occurrence in southern Cameroonian cities and villages. We have on record a list of some of the documented massacres that have occurred since 2017. Pinyin, Bali, Krugwe, Kuzang, Ngarbu, Kumba, Maotu, Bamenda, and counting. Gab Ellison reporting for Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
All right, Dr. Martins, are you still there?
Yeah. It is shocking. It is shocking, it is shameful that in the 21st century, after going through what happened in Rwanda, when the world sat down and said, we shall never allow something of this nature to happen again, history is repeating itself in Ambazonia, and the world at large is just watching with indifference. But when the first human being was killed in Ukraine, the entire world, even including African nations, stood up to support the Ukrainian people. Is there any lesson there for us to learn? Isn't that a stark demonstration of racism? And this has not just been reported by Africans. You have other nationalities saying the same thing. So what are all these international organizations here for? Is it just to serve a particular race? Or what is the underlying conditions that must be satisfied for people to be treated equally? Secretary of State or former Secretary of State Debunking made that same statement. There is no other reason but racism. But there is always a silver lining. And what is that silver lining? I hope African countries, independent African countries, should be more responsible to the people of their race. I would have expected that the African Union would stand up and do something practical, do something that the world will stand and say, yes, these people have started respecting people of their own race. But what do we see? Resolutions upon resolutions upon resolutions upon resolutions. Yes, it is good to issue a resolution, but a resolution without action is meaningless. I really hope African countries will sit down and really determine what they have to do when things of this nature happen in their backyard. We watched what happened in Rwanda. And what is even amazing about what happened in Rwanda is that they had planned, or La Republique had planned, committing the same atrocities in La Republique, in Ambazonia. And they actually admitted all those who committed atrocities in Rwanda in La Republique. And they were in La Republique for many years, teaching them the tactics that they are using today. So let the world know that what La Republique is doing today is not something that just came out overnight. They had consulted all those who participated in the genocide in Rwanda to learn the lessons on how to kill their own people. And these are the people that some blacklegs and some Ambazonians think that we have a common future. It's impossible. I keep on making this point very clear. Until my last day on earth, I shall never support Ambazonia having a common future with La Republique. It can never happen. And let Ambazonians understand, these people, I told you the other day, that country and those people They are the symbol of a living hell. If you want to stay in hell, then go to La République, and you can assure yourself of hell on earth. We shall never capitulate. We shall never allow La République take over our land. And we will fight to the last man. And I hope the international community is watching us now. Maybe the crisis in Ukraine is a blessing in disguise. Now we have seen in broad daylight the stark difference in terms of treatment between the people of Ukraine and the Amazonian people. We can see the discrimination, the way all the world powers, they make every effort to save Ukraine. Yet, we've been languishing in this war for the past 5 years. I hope they will turn their heart and at least look at us and help us, because there are so many moving parts in this struggle. What happens to Ukraine may end up happening in Amazonia. And the interest of many people or many countries will be at risk if this action is let to go, is allowed to go on without bringing an end to the conflict. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much. I really hope that they will turn their hearts and come to our rescue. All right, but Dr. Mungua, let's move up to Sunday, May 1st, lockdown. Now, do you think that the IG's call for lockdown come Sunday is strategic?
Yes, absolutely. I must go on. It is absolutely strategic. How can you have a country where there are no jobs? The rate of employment is almost, I can say 100%. Nobody works, or very few people work. And you expect them to go on the street on Sunday? For what? These are the same administration that is targeting our people to kill. Don't you think that will be an opportunity for them to find out where our restoration forces are to target us? Absolutely. The interim government is very clear on this. There is total lockdown on Sunday. Absolute lockdown. It doesn't matter what La République thinks. They may decide to change the rules. They may decide to issue communiques, but that has nothing to do with us. We maintain a lockdown on Sunday, and that's it.
All right, sir. According to reports, La République du Cameroon is preparing very hard to ensure that 20th May celebrations in Amazonia becomes a success. What's the interim government doing to halt the day of historic fraud?
This has been a recurring event now for the past 5 years, and each time we issue the same communique. It is even, how do I put it, contradictory, in the sense that one of the reasons that they put forward to supposedly suspend the May 1st March is because of COVID-19. If it is because of COVID-19, I think May 20th is just 20 days away from May 1st, or 19 days. What makes them believe that the condition will change? It's within 3 weeks of each other. So you can understand that this is all manipulation. We have already directed our resident forces on what to do. And we have told the population, you are not part of 20th May. I think I made it very clear. 20th May has no significance in our history. Nothing happened on 20th May that we should be jubilating or marching. Absolutely not. We have Independence Day, which is October 1st. And that's it. And maybe other holidays will come in the future when we have a sovereignty. We cannot be celebrating the birthday of the late president's wife, Mrs. Ahidjo. So it is very clear as far as the interim government and the Amazonian people are concerned. We have to maintain an absolute lockdown on May 20th. Nobody's allowed, unless you are a black leg or unless you have something to do with La République. But beware, there are consequences.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for creating this time to be with us. We hope to have you again some other time.
You're welcome. Thank you for talking to you.
All right, and I'm sure that you can't wait to listen to our editorial for today. Here it is.
In our editorial of today, we will resume the recount of the historicity of today's Ambazonia. Before this day, we had a walk through pre-1858 Amba's Bay before the arrival of the Europeans. 1858, the city of Victoria established by Alfred Seker. 1884, establishment of the Amba's Bay Protectorate. 1887, the Amba's Bay Protectorate ceded to Germany. 1916, Britain and France occupied German Cameroon. In 1919, German Cameroon divided at the Versailles Treaty. Today we make even further. 1922, the Cameroons become a League of Nations mandate. In 1922, the Cameroons was made a League of Nations mandated territory under United Kingdom administration, while French Cameroon was also made a League of